Nezuko Kamado represents one of the most unique cases in demon transformation history. Despite being transformed into a demon by Muzan himself, she fought against her instincts to avoid hurting humans and retained her love for her family. But what if this extraordinary potential was discovered and cultivated by the very source of all demons himself? In today's video, we'll explore an alternate timeline where Muzan doesn't just turn Nezuko into a demon, but also decides to raise her as his own heir. We know that Muzan attacks the Kamado family to eliminate sun-breathing and the legacy of the Hanafuda earrings, and him choosing to transform Nezuko is just the Demon King's way of adding insult to injury. However, in this version, something remarkable happens during her transformation. As Nezuko's body adapts to becoming a demon, Muzan notices that she doesn't immediately lose her human consciousness like other newly turned demons. Instead, she seems to be fighting an internal battle between her human memories and demonic instincts. Rather than leaving her to complete the transformation alone, Muzan becomes fascinated by this anomaly. He spent over 1,000 years creating demons, but the only person to resist him so strongly was Tamayo. In Tamayo's case, Muzan was nowhere near as strong as he was during the Taisho era, and she was only liberated after Yorichi's devastating attack weakened the Demon King even further. Seeing potential for another resistance on his hands, Muzan's ego gets in the way of making a calculated decision. Instead of killing Nezuko on the spot, he takes her under his wing, hoping to shape her into the perfect demon. Muzan envisions the ruthlessness of demon kind combined with a level of restraint and strategic thinking that only retained humanity can provide. When Tanjiro returns home, he finds the massacre just as in the original timeline. However, this time, there are signs of a struggle that continue after the initial attack. Nezuko's faint scent leads away from the house, but it feels different, even corrupted. This trail is also intertwined with the overpowering presence of Muzan himself. Tanjiro tries to follow the scent into the forest, but not even his finely tuned sense of smell can navigate through a snowstorm in the forest. Unlike the original story where Tanjiro had hope because Nezuko was still barely alive, here he witnesses clear evidence that his entire family is lost. The realization that the Kamado family is all but eliminated breaks Tanjiro in a completely different way. Kiyabu arrives on the scene to find Tanjiro overcome with grief. The Water Hashira recognizes the signs of Muzan's presence, and knows that any human taken by the Demon King is lost forever. Instead of diverting Tanjiro to Orokodaki Sokonji in hopes of saving his sister, Kiyabu gives him the same choice with a darker motivation: revenge against the demons who stole everything from him. Meanwhile, Muzan begins an unprecedented experiment. Instead of simply commanding Nezuko through his blood like other demons, he decides to educate her. While the lesser demons we see in the series are monsters with no control over their bloodlust, Nezuko is educated directly by Muzan and develops skills including her blood demon art. Muzan also discovers that Nezuko's unique constitution allows her to retain memory and emotion while still gaining demonic powers. He realizes that this makes her potentially more dangerous than most of the upper moons. The likes of even Gyoko and Hantengu are slaves to their demonic instincts, giving Nezuko the potential to surpass their lethality. Under Muzan's tutelage, Nezuko develops not just her blood demon art, but also advanced combat techniques and strategic thinking. While other demons are given a level of independence, Muzan grooms Nezuko to become the ultimate weapon against demon slayers, and makes her learn about demon slayer breathing techniques and their unique characteristics. He demands that she works with Nakime, and help her with scouting out the locations of the demon slayer training grounds, along with the weaknesses of each Hashira. But most importantly, Muzan brainwashes Nezuko, teaching her to view her human past not as something to cherish, but as a weakness to overcome. Muzan convinces her that her family's love was conditional, and that the only way to find purpose and meaning is through strength and domination. After months of training, Nezuko emerges as something entirely new. If Muzan is the Demon King, you could consider her a demon princess, with intelligence rivaling Muzan's. In the original timeline, Nezuko never really practiced her blood demon art, but still evolved to the level where she was able to do some damage to the upper moons. Now, with consistent training, her skills develop beyond the simple concept of burning blood. She learns an extended form of pyrokinesis that extends the range of her already devastating attacks. Now, before we continue Nezuko's story, we need to explore how Tanjiro is affected by losing his sister. On one hand, the burden of protecting her is off his shoulders, and he's no longer distracted by the goal of restoring Nezuko's humanity. Additionally, the desire for revenge makes Tanjiro a completely different demon slayer. Originally, he showed compassion for demons by admiring Kyogai's writing and showing pity for Rui's tragic childhood. However, in this timeline, Tanjiro shows no mercy and is only interested in reaching greater heights until he's strong enough to beat Muzan himself. Tanjiro's intensity also means that he doesn't form the same bonds with Inosuke and Zenitsu, because he sees attachments as things that will only get in the way of his goals. But it's not only Tanjiro's personality that changes in Nezuko's absence. What happens to most of the story arcs where she makes a major contribution in taking down the demons? Lesser demons like the Temple Demon, Swamp Demon, or even Susumaru and Yahaba will still be defeated regardless, as Nezuko hadn't even developed a blood demon art at the time. Even though she was instrumental in Tanjiro's battle against Rui, it was still Giyu who appeared on the scene and finally eliminated the Lower Moon 5. So once again, that ends in a win for the Demon Slayers. By this point, Tanjiro's motivation has already pushed him to a level beyond what we see in the original series, so the encounter with Enmu will also end the same, especially given that Rengoku is on the Mugen train with them. So that means we only begin to feel Nezuko's absence in the Entertainment District arc, since by this point she was a pretty powerful demon, and Daki and Gyutaro were threats beyond even Ahashira's capabilities. While the Demon Slayers still manage to take out the Upper Moon 6, there will be casualties, with Tengen and Inosuke failing to make it out alive without Nezuko's Blood Demon art to heal them from Gyutaro's poison. Now, the Swordsmith Village arc actually doesn't change much, since Mitsuri and Genya are still capable of holding off Han Tengu's emotions until Tanjiro lands the killing blow. But now for the moment you've all been waiting for. How do Tanjiro and Nezuko eventually meet? The pivotal moment doesn't come during a random encounter, as Nezuko plans out when she will meet Tanjiro right from the start. You see, by this point, Tanjiro has discovered sun breathing and is on the path to mastering it, and meeting Nezuko is intended to be an act of psychological warfare against the emerging threat. Nezuko appears before Tanjiro not as a mindless beast, but as a perfectly composed demon princess. She speaks to him with intelligence and even affection, explaining how Muzan saved her from the weakness of humanity and gave her true power. This meeting devastates Tanjiro more than any physical battle could. The sister he's been fighting to avenge was not only alive all along, but was also a willing participant in Muzan's campaign against humanity. But that doesn't mean Nezuko came out of the meeting totally unaffected either. Remember how she was more powerful due to her ability to retain human emotions and sensibilities? Well, the same strength was also a weakness, as meeting Tanjiro forced her to question her resolve. Nezuko began questioning her purpose. Fond childhood memories resurfaced, and she began wondering what the point of pursuing dominance and demonic strength was. But this moment isn't enough to make her switch allegiances, and Nezuko continues participating in Muzan's missions. With her intelligence and emotions, Nezuko also approaches Tamayo, but as a fellow intelligent demon interested in taking down Muzan as opposed to an enemy. Tamayo believes Nezuko since she appears to be free of Muzan's curse as well, and thus Nezuko is able to gauge the progress of Tamayo's research and the power of her anti-demon drugs. Armed with this information, Nezuko orchestrates the assassination of Ubuyashiki Kagaya earlier in the timeline, meaning that the potency of Tamayo and Shinobu's anti-Muzan drug is weaker as well. As the Demon Slayers fall into the Infinity Castle, their matchups are no longer the same as before. Instead of assisting Giyu in his fight against Akaza, Tanjiro comes face to face with Nezuko and is left with a difficult choice. Does he try to save his sister, or does he stay true to his mission as a Demon Slayer? The battle begins with Tanjiro pushed onto the back foot, but despite being overwhelmed, he senses a lack of killer intent from Nezuko. Realizing that his sister is not totally gone, Tanjiro desperately appeals to her to come back and fight for humanity. Tanjiro's desperate pleas force Nezuko to re-experience her own human memories, and all the joy they felt as a family. This emotional overload is so strong that it creates a crack in the mental conditioning Muzan spent years building. Rather than simply returning to her human nature, Nezuko finds herself torn between two identities, the loving sister and the demon princess. Our timeline ends in a mystery, with Nezuko as a wild card who could tip the balance in either direction. Her retained intelligence makes her too valuable for Muzan to kill, but her restored memories make her too dangerous to fully trust. The Demon Slayers must now face an enemy who knows them better than any demon they've faced before, while Muzan must contend with the protege who may have learned too well from his teachings. If Nezuko decides to side with Muzan and kills Tanjiro, the Demon Slayers will be exterminated. However, if she chooses humanity over demonkind, Nezuko's help would lead to a more decisive elimination of the Upper Moons and an eventual triumph over Muzan. So which timeline do you think is more likely? Would Nezuko end up being the ultimate antagonist, or would her human memories ultimately lead to redemption? Let us know your thoughts in the comments down below.